4 times a year, all investment managers that have over 100 million in assets under management have to file what is called a Form 13F. These forms disclose exactly what moves the biggest investors in the world like Ray Dalio, Michael Burry, and Charlie Munger are making in their portfolios, and more importantly, in my opinion, it tells us what moves Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway has been making over the past few months. So in this video, I want to briefly go over every move that was made in Buffett's portfolio, dig a little deeper into some of the bigger moves that he made, and I also want to give you 4 major takeaways from this report. So that being said, let's jump into it. Okay, so we're currently looking at the activity of Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway for Q2 of 2023. One of the things you will notice before we dig into these positions is when you look at the percent change to his portfolio from each of these moves, all of them are less than 1%, so there weren't any major moves in his portfolio in this most recent 13F filing. But let's go ahead and go through each of these moves one by one. The first thing he did was he added some capital to Capital One Financial. You can see he added around 2.5 million shares. He added more capital to one of his bigger positions, OXY, that's Occidental Petroleum. He added over 12 million shares. And then he added 3 new positions, that's DHI, NVR, and LEN.B. All of these are home building companies. We'll touch on that just a little bit more later on the video, but those are the only positions he added capital to. The rest of these are all sales. So starting right here, we can see he sold some of his Chevron Corporation. He reduced it by around 7%. He sold some CE, he reduced it by 39.2%. He sold General Motors, he reduced his position by 45%. He reduced his position in GL by 60%. A big reduction in his Activision Blizzard position. He reduced it by 70%, and then he sold out of 3 positions entirely. That was MCK, MMC, and VTS. If we jump over and click on the holdings, one of the things you will continue to notice is Warren Buffett is very heavily weighted to his top 5 stocks. They currently have 48 holdings in the Berkshire Hathaway portfolio, but his largest position, Apple, now makes up 51% of his entire portfolio, with Bank of America sitting at 8.51, American Express at 7.59, Coca-Cola at 6.92, and CVX Chevron. And keep in mind, he did just reduce this position by a little bit, but that position makes up 5.56% of his portfolio. So the top 5 positions in his portfolio make up the vast majority of his entire portfolio. Now let's discuss 4 major takeaways from his most recent 13F filing. This is something I put out on Twitter the other day, so if you want more up-to-date content, be sure to follow me over there. But if we scroll down, you can see that Buffett is a big believer in the current homebuilder market. His 3 new positions were all in homebuilding companies, and all 3 of these companies are up big to date. You can see DHI up 35.6%, NVR up 33.94%, and LEN.B up 48.1% year to date. If we jump over to Seeking Alpha, let's dig into these companies just a little bit. You can see DHI currently trading at $123 per share and is up over 56% over the past year. Now, what's really interesting about this move into the homebuilder market is homebuilding is extremely cyclical. If we look at this 5-year chart, we can see some pretty big dips. Like for example, we can see in 2020, it basically had a 50% decline. If we come over here and look in 2021, we saw basically a 40% decline. And over the past year, we can see, like I just discussed, it's currently up 56.3%. And with interest rates basically at the highest number they've been over the past 5 years, I think a lot of people were expecting to see a slowdown in the housing market, but Buffett clearly doesn't think that's the case. But we do need to also keep in mind that when Buffett makes these types of moves, he's not planning on making money over the next 1, 3, 5, or even 10 years a lot of the times. I think he thinks extremely long term. He's thinking this is a 30-year play potentially. So when you look at companies like DHI, NVR, and LEN.B, although they have seen a nice run up over the past year, he's definitely thinking long term. The second takeaway is something that I mentioned a little earlier in the video, and that's that Buffett is not afraid to bet big on what he believes in. While Berkshire Hathaway currently has 48 stocks in their portfolio, their top 5 stocks make up 76.44% of their entire portfolio, and Apple alone now makes up 51% of their portfolio after being up 42.15% year to date. So if we jump back over to those current holdings, Apple is now 51% of their entire portfolio. And while he didn't add any over the past quarter, the huge run up in share price we've seen from Apple has made it take up a larger percent of his portfolio. So while these top positions take up most of his portfolio, if we scroll down, even though that these companies here take up a very small amount of his portfolio, they still have very large dollar amounts allocated to them. The third takeaway is out with consumer staples, in with the information technology. About a decade ago, consumer staples made up around 35% of Berkshire Hathaway's portfolio. Now it only makes up 12.3%. Meanwhile, information technology has gone from 17.5% to over 50%. And yes, to be fair, much of this is because of Apple stock and the huge run-up we've seen in their share price. So let's dig into this chart just a little bit more. And to do so, we're going to jump over to a website called Well Wisdom. This is another place where you can see more information on 13Fs. But we're currently looking at the allocation for each sector in Warren Buffett's portfolio. And like I mentioned, around 2012, around 10 or 11 years ago, consumer staples made up around 35% of his portfolio, and you can see how that has gradually been reduced over time, and it's now sitting around 12.3%. Meanwhile, information technology in 2012 was sitting at around 17 or 18%, and due to the huge run-up we've seen in Apple's share price, it's now sitting at over 50%. Looking at this chart, it's pretty clear that Buffett currently likes financial stocks and has always liked financial stocks, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. The fourth takeaway is that Warren Buffett has a $130 billion dilemma on his hands. Berkshire Hathaway is in a very rare position. They currently have more cash than they know what to do with. So while we didn't see any major moves in his most recent 13F filing, he's definitely sitting on a large cash stockpile ready to make a move when he sees the opportunity. So there you go, those are all of the moves Buffett made in his most recent 13F filing. Again, it's important to remember that Buffett has a very long-term mindset when it comes to investing. While I don't ever recommend copying someone's trades, it is always interesting to see the moves of the greatest investors in the world. Go ahead and let me know in the comments down below what you thought of Buffett's most recent moves. If you'd like to join a community of dividend investors and get access to all of my spreadsheets, then you can head over to my Patreon page at the link in the description. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.